This is indeed a pleasure for me to talk with you. Jackie Coogan is on the line. How are you?
Oh, fine.
It's a real pleasure to call you. You're out in California these days.
Yes, out here in Palm Springs.
And have been enjoying yourself, I'm sure, but I understand you're working on a new project, aren't you?
You mean the book and the tour?
Yeah. Can you tell us more about that, Jackie?
Well, I'm going to make a tour of the colleges of the United States and Canada, and as far up as Alaska, with it's the story of my life and in motion pictures in the entertainment world. And I have a film that my son has put together from my past pictures and highlights of my life, and it'll be shown to the audience, and then we'll have about an hour and a half long question and answer and everybody will find out about me.
Mm-hmm. You've had a long and illustrious career in the films, obviously.
Yes, I've been around, actively in entertainment for about 63 years now.
Most recently that comes to mind for me, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it was Uncle Fester on the AADAMS Family that we probably can remember you a lot by.
Well, yes, that was the last continuing series I did.
Mm-hmm.
However, I work in other shows. I've cut myself down now to about 2 shows a year.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say the AADAMS Family was the last, because that was number one on TV.
Mm-hmm. There's a very famous case that, affected child labor laws.
The Coogan Law.
It's called the Coogan Law. You were making films back in the days when Charlie Chaplin was around, and in fact, a famous classic film called The Kid was a film that you appeared.
Well, yes, I only did one picture with Chaplin. That was The Kid. And he chose me to work with him. That's his first independent picture that he owned everything on and put up the money for. Took a big gamble, his first feature, so we made it, and it turned out to be a very big success.
Where was that film, Jackie?
That was filmed at the Chaplin Studios in Hollywood and in and around Los Angeles for locations.
Okay, so would that have been one of the first films that he made once he was out there? Because I know he filmed in Chicago for S&E Pictures.
Well, he worked for S&E as I started out, also at S&E in Chicago. But when he came out here, he had a different setup, a different deal with a different producing company and a release company. And the releasing company, before it had been Senate, he worked for Senate,
Mm-hmm.
and he had also worked for Mutual.
That's right.
But then he got the idea. He is very ambitious, and he wanted to control his own destiny. So he he bought his own studio and went at it a la full out, full steam ahead.
Let me ask you this, Jackie. You were obviously a youngster working with the great...
I was 4.5 years old, yes.
How did you feel being around him, or did you have any impressions?
Oh, well, he didn't. You see, I've been with my folks in show business before, on the stage in vaudeville. Of course, making motion pictures to me was very... well, it wasn't too thrilling because, you didn't have an audience to play to. It really didn't strike me as being anything because Mr. Chaplin was a very nice little fellow, but he didn't mean anything to me.
Yeah, I guess not.
Because I didn't see many motion pictures, and Chaplin, up to that time, you see, had only done 2 real comedies.
So he really wasn't known as the great filmmaker that we'd think of him today, really.
Well, I think he was by his peers and by my folks, but to me, he didn't mean anything. He wasn't as important as a man that had a dog act on a
on a vaudeville stage.
On a vaudeville bill.
Yeah. When did you really feel as if you'd made it in the films? Now, I know, a lot of people made a few films and then, of course, dropped out when the sound films came along because they couldn't make it in talkies. You were really lucky, and there's only been a few people like that have been able to continue in films from childhood on through their adult years.
Yes, there are several of us. Cooper has managed to do it. Jackie has been very successful, and Mickey Rooney, although he's handled badly, I think he had more talent than anybody else in as far as that's concerned. But it was through bad handling and through bad selection of material, and his personal life didn't stand for any scrutiny.
Mm-hmm.
But your original question was the.
Did you ever feel as if you'd really made it in films, or?
Well, yes, I knew I had made it when I got the first award from Photoplay in 1922 for the #1 box office.
Yeah, that would evidently do it, I'm sure.
And that when my dad explained, because a child in show business learns so much so fast about the outside world. And when I found out I was #1, and then again in 1923, why, that's kind of, it's a head sweller, I guess you could call it.
Mm-hmm.
And of course they tried to, minimize it to me, but the facts were there. And the really import of that didn't hit me until later.
Jackie Coogan is our special guest today. I want to break for a commercial, and we'll be right back. We're back with Jackie Coogan. Maybe you remember him best as Uncle Fester on the AADAMS Family from a few years back. He's had a long and illustrious career, and as we mentioned earlier, the Coogan law came about because of an incident that involved you. Jackie, can you tell us a little bit about that? It's a child labor law that still is on the books, isn't it?
Oh, yes. Well, the fact was, you see, when I reached my majority, 21 in those days, that was the law, why I started to, well, where are the proceeds now, and what has been going into Jackie Coogan Productions for this number, 20 years or so. So then I found out that I wasn't going to get anything. So naturally, after getting as high as $22,500 a week salary, week in and week out, why, I kind of wondered, and I was going to get married at the time to Betty Grable, and so I had to go to court about it, and it caused a big stink in the motion picture business, because it caused a big stink in Congress and in Washington, because there was no protection for children. And
was it because
there's been no need for it before, because no children had ever made that much money?
How did it involve a dishonest manager, or?
Oh yes, well, it was theft.
No doubt about it, just out and out theft.
It was theft and gambling. With they never did find what had happened to about $10 or $11 million. So. That must be said to have been gambled away.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's very easy to do that. I can vouch for that. That if you get stuck, you're in big trouble in the gambling business. So, but my mother and my manager, who later became my stepfather, were guilty of that.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a distasteful thing, because, but my mother was the president of Jackie Coogan Productions, and consequently, my dad was dead at this time. He was killed just before I was 21 in an automobile accident. So I had to look around for for other things to do, because by the time I got a settlement with, it was kind of a left-handed settlement. It didn't amount to anything. I had to go into other fields because I had been blackballed as a result of my lawsuit.
So you really caught the raw end of the deal.
Well, I was ethnically. You see, I was suing somebody of a race that controlled the motion picture business, and they took instant revenge on me, and complete. So I couldn't get a job in something I'd been doing all my life.
That would have to be very depressing. I've often thought about, people who have become successful and have supposedly made their fortune and then losing it. That's rougher than going the other way, isn't it?
Well, the way I look at it, I never had it. You see, it was never in my hands. Yet everything was supposed to go into the Jackie Coogan Productions and be administered, and money begets money. And we had a lot of things going for. We had a finance company, and we had a factoring concern that, and then we used to do outright financing of businesses. It was pretty solid, because everything was growing in California, as it still is, and it was we were tied in at the beginning.
Hollywood has really had its ups and downs, and everybody says Hollywood just isn't the same, but it's probably gone through quite a few transitions during the time you've been in the films.
Hollywood is a joke, really. Hollywood is not even a town or a city. It's just a mailing address. Hollywood has been cheapened terribly. Hollywood Boulevard is like a little carnival town, all by itself, and nobody goes near it anymore except the tourists, because there's all it has is the Walk of Fame, with the names of the people that have made motion pictures, and that's become a joke. And they're putting every Tom, Dick, and Harry down there that he ever made a record or did a radio broadcast.
Jackie, is it a healthy situation? And I'm going to ask you to get a little philosophical here with me, perhaps. But boy, when you talk about movies, you're talking about either making a fortune or losing your shirt. And I imagine there have been quite a few, without naming names. You've probably seen people really make a bundle and then all of a sudden lose it too, haven't you?
Well, it's a funny thing. Today, there's no picture business really. It's everything is centered on television. We have a lot of amateurs that make motion pictures with amateurs as actors. Some of them, a few are professional, and they come along and they make a good picture every once in a while by mistake. But there's no constructive thing of turning out like a studio turned out, let's say, 78 features during a year, or 40 features during a year. It's hit and miss now, and they make the film industry has progressed tremendously as far as technicality has gone. Things like Star Wars are really a tribute to the people who have stuck with motion pictures as an art form, and to see what they could do with it, to further it, and with the use of miniatures and the lighting techniques. They have all progressed, but the management of movies has fallen by the wayside. There are no more studios. It's made shows are made now by individuals, and it's usually hitched up to a big star that some of them can act, some of them can't act.
I was just going to say.
At all.
Yeah, I was just going to say.
You see, the banks won't lend money on just everybody.
I was going to say, though, anymore, it's not so much acting that you see in the shows; it's action and it's technical advancements that you really see that make a movie.
That's really it. So I'm sorry, in the old days when a studio had 40 features going a year, 50 features going a year, that's one every week. And you had the directors and the crews to do those things. Today, you're liable to get have a crew, and you find women being electricians on it, and they're physically unable to do that kind of work.
It's heavy work, in other words.
Well, no, it's this great equality thing, which is a bunch of junk, because they're not supposed to wrestle lights around.
Jackie Coogan, hey.
They can't. Half of them can't even do the heavy work that's called upon, and have to get help from somebody else.
You just brought up another point, though. Maybe people were not qualified to get into the business for quite some time. Maybe nepotism even played a part. Do you suppose?
Well, of course. We had one example out here. We had Carl Lemley at Old Universal, and you couldn't turn any which way without stepping on a cousin or a nephew of his. It was terrible, but it was something they learned, at least from people who knew what they were doing.
Perhaps this is some of the reason, though, that Hollywood has sort of crumbled to the point it has, you suppose?
Well, there isn't any more studio. That's all gone. It's just independent producers, and some of them are very good. And there's a few directors that are very good, but when they get very imitative. An example is Franco Zeffirelli, who just did a remake of the Champ that Jackie Cooper and Wally Berry made. And it's the most boring thing that you could imagine on film, where the other one was a vibrant thing. But they are trying to capture once again the magic by imitating, and
just doesn't work. In other words,
they had done before, and they don't have the. Zeffirelli was great in the Life of Our Lord that he did for TV. That was wonderful, but it certainly is no qualification to do a gutsy thing like the Champ, because he's doing an interpretation then of a man of Jesus Christ who was everybody and everything in people's minds. And so you can take any route you want, but when you go to make a remake of the Champ, you've got the little boy and the broken down prize fighter, and that's what you've got to go on. And who are they? Is this child Schroeder? Is he supposed to be? He was picked by him, by Zeffirelli.
You just can't reduplicate the originals in a lot of cases.
Why call it the Champ? Why not call it the prize fighter and the boy?
Yeah.
And then comparisons won't be made.
Yeah.
But they have the guts, to challenge, because they think that anything that was done 35 years ago, they can do better. Well, pictorially, they can. Film, as far as the quality and texture of the filming, it's beautiful. But it's shallow in the presentation, as a little dish of water. There's not that creamy effect to it.
Yeah, there's an interesting point, Jackie. I was watching the special tribute they did to Alfred Hitchcock the other night. Yeah. And I'll tell you, just in like 10 or 20 seconds of film that they'd show from different clips, you could get so wrapped up in that little segment of film.
Oh, sure. I mean, he was. There's another man. There's another fellow. He's to me, he's a newcomer in the business. Really, he was. He didn't come around until Talking Pictures. He was. Of course, I hate anybody. I don't like anybody who's stagey, who who creates an exterior that he presents to the public. And then, there's so many of them. It's a false exterior that they, I am the greatest, and they have this ultra reserve, and they're way laid back. And I like people that are forthright and outspoken, you know?
Mm-hmm. Jackie Coogan, can you hang on again? I'm going to break again for a commercial. This is really interesting. We'll get back. Jackie Coogan is our special guest. I'll tell you, I am an old movie buff, and I love, looking at things the way they used to be in film. Part of that maybe is part of the mystique, though. The fact that the old cars, the old clothes, the old morals and things were there. I'm a real Laurel and Hardy buff, and I don't know if you ever had a chance to work with them or not, but we were talking about staying power and turning out films. Probably very few people have cranked out the films like Laurel and Hardy did. And
those were little gems. They were so beautiful. Of course, you've got to give all the credit as far as to what came on the screen to Stan Laurel, because he conceived all those wonderful bits of business, and bits of business are what make up a comedy,
Mm-hmm.
And Stan Laurel's background and training. Of course, he worked in the same troupe, in Fred Carno's troupe,
which Chaplin did, right?
So he was a beaut, just a beaut, and Oliver was smart enough, although they didn't get along too well,
Well, they got along okay, didn't they? But they just had other interests.
Well, it was good morning, yes, but not any friendship, not friendship. They weren't together off the screen, is what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm. Let me ask you this, and then I'll let you go. What would you like to see change about Hollywood? Do you think it'll ever get back to the point where it once was, Jackie?
No, I don't really think so, because they priced themselves out of the business as far as making motion pictures. You can't make a good motion picture now with all of, with the trimmings,
mm-hmm.
For less than a couple of $1 million, and I don't know what's going to happen with inflationary in the United States. Because one thing, you can't make a motion picture on credit, and that's the way the United States is built, is just on credit.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have any solid foundation for it. But you see, the people that have the money that finance these motion pictures, their first lookout is for that buck, and they're looking for a return on that buck. So consequently, it's how good a deal you can make, who you can get, and like if you can get a big star, the money is in your pocket then. But if you haven't got the star, you've got to go to great lengths to maybe make a wonderful picture.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like the old days when the studios say, well, all right, Louis Pasteur was a great man, and we'll make a picture about it. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
And they assigned the director, and they assigned 2 or 3 writers to it. And that was earmarked, and that was production number 228774, and that rolled in 6 months from the date of the first thought of it.
Mm-hmm. But anymore, you're saying you got to have the star. It's getting harder and harder to find stars. When they have to tell you that here's a star, they ain't no star. There
are stars that you can like Warren Beatty.
Mm-hmm.
Stars that you can go to a bank and say, here's a contract I have with Warren Beatty to make an unspecified picture. I want to do, and the banker will 9 times out of 10 say, I don't care what you do with them, how much do you want?
Mm-hmm.
Because they know that
okay.
Beatty well, Beatty is in the position of the man going to the bank.
Right.
Because he is a hell of a deal maker, and he's a hell of a director, and he's a complete entity as far as motion picture making is concerned.
Mm-hmm.
But there are a lot of people who have things, and the agents are the big motivating factor now in deals that are made in Hollywood.
Mm-hmm.
The agents practically run things because they control certain properties, and when you can control a certain property and do anything that you want with him, with him or her, because there's only one girl in one woman that you can borrow money on. That's Streisand. You couldn't get it. You could maybe if Fonda wins the Academy Award, you'll be able to borrow money on her. But up to now, Streisand's the only one.
Mm-hmm. Jackie,
it's a monetary thing, and one that you have to consider, and then getting a good picture together and getting the component parts and having a good production man work on it. So consequently, it's a chain of command thing now that the other was in the studio, it was self-contained. You never went out. You seldom went outside the studio to get somebody. Maybe you did if you could only cast a certain one guy in it that could play it like Gable to play Red Butler.
Mm-hmm.
And you'd have to go. Selznick had to go to MGM for it.
Let me ask you this, Jackie. Do you think? Well, I don't know what salaries and all this kind of thing they demand anymore, but it seems like people can make so much money. If people are willing to make less money, do you think you'd be able to band some good actors together who'd be willing to work for less money and maybe get the studio system rolling again? Or it would never happen, huh?
No, the ego trips that they've been on are too satisfying, you see. When they say I got when Holden made that big score on River Kwai, why he was the envy of everybody. He got because Bill made $5-6 million off that picture because he had a piece of it, and he got an astronomical salary.
Mm-hmm.
So Bill, who certainly deserved it, and who has fulfilled everything requisite that I can think of for a star, came away good. Everybody was happy to see it. But a lot of other people, you see, they say, well, I got $1,500,000, and I hear that so-and-so got $1,700,000.